Okay, folks, let's jump right into this. These blue Scott's shop towels are the primary material I'm going to be using. I just take a couple sheets, line them up, cut them in half, and then I start to cut them down to 1-inch strips. Using a paper cutter is the most efficient way to do this, and it allows a more consistent product at the end. So I take all those strips, bundle them up, and you need to make a lot because for something this size, you're going to use quite a few of them. So talking about what we need, something that's a real valuable tip for people is that these high density polyethylene gloves, the CA won't stick to them. So we're also going to be using some medium and thin and CA along with a little bit of activator. Now back to these gloves. These gloves actually CA won't stick to them. And the reason why is because they're actually made out of the same material as the bottles that your CA is delivered in. So no more days of having little blue bits of paper towel stuck to your fingers. So we're going to start off with the thin CA. I'm going to use that for the majority of the process. To prepare the paper towels, I just fold them in half. A lot of times I just put I put a couple of drops on. Well, maybe more than a couple drops, a good healthy squirt on there. And then I will apply it as far as it'll go, and then I'll use the other half. Now, something to note is that these early coats are going to be a little more difficult to apply because the wood's very thirsty, and you're going to see as I put it on, you're going to see like a wet sheen from the glue, but it's going to appear to dry very quickly because it's going to soak into the wood and go away. So you're going to use quite a few towels for these first couple of coats, after which you'll be able to do pretty much traverse the entire thing in 1 to 2 passes. So you'll be able to start at one end, and then you may have to reload one time to continue. So, and we're going to do the first couple of coats in that manner, and then after that point, then I'll go ahead and do a little bit of activator to check my progress. Now, some people ask, why would I use CA glue on a project like an urn? Okay, so some of the reason is that it's quick, and I really wanted a high gloss sheen on this project. So a lot of times the reason why I wouldn't choose CA is because I don't want a high gloss sheen. Although there are ways to deal with it, but that's outside the scope of this video. Now you'll notice this little fan in the foreground. I found that it's a really good idea to have a fan of some kind that's blowing the fumes away from you. I've heard people talk about putting the fumes on the fan on the other side of the project to draw the fumes away that way, but that doesn't work for me. So as you can see, I've done the first two full coats, and I'm doing a little bit of CA here. I'll apply one more coat, and then I'm going to turn the lathe off and check it and check my progress and see how things are going. You know, this is a good time to evaluate how things are going. If it's unnecessarily orange peely or it's got some really bad effects going on between the wood and the CA, this is a good time to go back and wet sand it and get it right. Since it's great, I do a little dance here. And I go ahead and continue. So I liked what I saw, so I go ahead and continue working on it. So there's going to be a whole lot of coats here. And I want to go ahead and make note right now that it may look like I'm turning this at a pretty good speed. I'm not. If you look down in the corner, you can see that my lathe is running at 106 RPM. It's really important that you don't run it at a high RPM because you don't want to have little textured dots on your face shield, which you will get, and little dots all over your shirt and your arm and the walls and your lathe and everything else in the vicinity. So you want to do this slow. I just sped up the video because there's a whole lot of repetitive things happening, and it would have been like 15 minutes of watching me put finish on. So I went ahead and sped it up for that purpose. And you can see that my gloves are doing their job. You don't see the paper towel sticking to me at all, which is great. I remember when I used to try to use the nitrile gloves, I'd end up with little blue dots on my fingertips when I was done. It is really terrible. And you could see just how nice a finish that it's laying down. you can see that it's also pretty shiny right now. Now I turned it off here to do a little inspection, and you can see that there's a couple of little ridges and dust and things in the finish. Those are things that I'm going to address in the next process. And by the way, you always want to put your lids back on your bottles. You don't want to leave them off, because if I don't put them right back right away, I may come out the next day and see that the bottle's been open all night. That's no good. So here you can see me getting ready to take the gloves off. Now, the thing is, like I said, usually when I use nitrile gloves, I end up with little blue dots on my fingertips. You can see my hands are perfectly clean, other than being sweaty from being inside that plastic glove. It comes off nice, no harm, no foul. I don't even have any blue dots attached to the glove. Now, this is showing the dust and the ridges in the finish, and we're going to go ahead and address those by wet sanding. Now, I don't get crazy with this, okay? I just do, I think this is 320 grit automotive wet dry paper. So the point is to go ahead and sand this until there's no longer any sheen left, all right? So what's going to happen is, as you go along, you're going to have dull areas and you're going to have like really shiny spots in between. And what those shiny spots are, those are low spots, all right? And you got to get the entire finish flat. So if you want a really high gloss finish, it doesn't matter what finish you're using. The thing is that you just need to have that top surface be perfectly flat, or as flat as you can get it. But there you can see that I have some shiny spots, shiny little lines in there. And what that is I just haven't sanded enough. This is the reason why we put so many coats on. You put on enough coats so that you can aggressively sand it to get it flat. Because once you get it flat, that's going to give you, the flatter you get it, the more optically clear and reflective your finish is going to be. I should say distortionless, distortion free, whatever. So anyway, it does take a little bit of time. It's not something to rush through. You really want to take your time. And I found that doing it by hand is better. So here you can see the results. There are a couple of little spots left, but the buffing process will deal with that. So this is perfectly fine. Now you'll also notice at the base there's some white stuff in the pores, because the ipe is an open pored wood. That's something that we're going to deal with in a later step. So now I'm going to do basically the same thing with the lid, okay? And the lid was a little challenging because it had so many nooks and crannies. So I just, took my time, and I kind of used my fingernail to kind of get, underneath the paper towel to kind of get into that little V groove right there at the edge where that bead is at the very bottom. And that worked out all right. So I do the same thing here, a couple coats, a little bit of activator, a couple more coats. But like I mentioned before about the ipe, it's got a very open grain structure. And when you sand it, a lot of times you get little white sanding dust stuck in there. So to be proactive, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a little bit of medium to the top. I'm going to apply it to the whole lid, but really what it's for is to make sure that I don't have little indentations from the open pored grain structure of the ipe. So I'll put a coat or two of medium on there, and that's going to just, the heavier viscosity is going to do a good job of filling in those grain pores. Now, again, and I feel like it's really worth noting here that I'm not turning the lathe is not running at this highest speed. It's just that I've sped it up so that you're not watching a bunch of monotonous things at real time speed, because that'd be a little boring. But I did want to include a lot of it because I just want you to understand exactly what goes into a finish like this. So of course we're going to wet sand the lid the same way we did the body of the urn. And again, it's going to be a little tricky. Anytime that you have anything with corners, like the difference in elevations in the lid here, you want to make sure that you take it easy around the actual corners, because it's very easy to sand through the finish. And again, you're going to see a couple spots where I probably could have sanded a little bit more, but a lot of that is going to be resolved at the buffer. So here I'm going to put a little bit of medium on the base, on the ipe foot on the piece to address the open pored nature of the material. And that's going to do a really nice job, as you'll be able to see later, get me a nice glass-like finish on the base as well. So now I'm taking it to the buffing wheel. I'm using the Beal buffing system. And here I'm using the Triple E wheel. And you can see that getting a high gloss shine once you've done that work with the wet sanding is actually quite easy. Now you'll see that if you look at it real carefully, you'll see a couple of low spots still in the finish, and that's fine because the Triple E is actually a very mild abrasive. So it's actually still abrading the surface. So it will take care of some of those really small low spots. So you can just take a little bit of extra time and it will take care of that, no problem. But we're going to, I got to work your way around the whole thing. And before you know it, you'll be done. So I actually did, I only show in this video using the Triple E wheel. I actually also use another wheel with white diamond compound. I just didn't get the video because I was running out of time. The vessel needed to be ready for the services the following day. So sorry about that. I missed that a little bit, but you can imagine it goes pretty much the same way. So I feel like this turned out awesome. The purple color, I wasn't really sure about it. I used a new product, Folk Art Ultra Dye. Come to find out it's discontinued, unfortunately. And the name of the color is Rendezvous. And I had quite a few folks asking how I do it. So here you go. There you go.
If you're new here, be sure to click the subscribe button. Make sure you also click the notification bell to be notified of new videos as they get released. In the description box below, you'll find a link to my Amazon affiliate store where you can find links to many of the tools and supplies that I use when creating these videos. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning visitor, thank you for watching. And to everybody, I'll see you next time. Dreadnought, make something. Peace.